Um, my name is Gina. I am the head of programs and partnerships at Impact Hub Ottawa. For those of you who don't know, I'll say more about us in a minute, but we are a collaborative co-working space and community based in downtown Ottawa. And it's important for us that at every one of these events, we ground ourselves in the knowledge that we're living, working, building livelihoods on land that is stolen, that is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And I think it's really important that we bear that in mind, especially as we start to rethink our relationship to the land and what it means to us. And I hope that that's going to be something that comes up in today's conversation with Biblioterre. For the moment, I'm gonna stop talking. I'll pause it and pass it over to Jonathan, our collaborators and our partners on this event, who's going to explain a bit more about this series and how the live interpretation element works for you. So Jonathan, over to you.
Hi everyone, bonjour tout le monde. This event will be in English, but if you want to have the translation in French, donc si vous voulez avoir la traduction en français, nous avons la coopérative Largo qui a accepté de pouvoir traduire cet événement. Vous pouvez cliquer sur le bouton interprétation. So if you want the interpretation from French, from English to French, you can click on the interpretation button at the bottom of the screen. So, je me présente. I present myself, Jonathan Jean-Folco. I'm a professor at the School of Social Innovation at St. Paul University in Ottawa. And I'm also on the board of the Atelier d'Innovation Sociale Mauril-Bélanger, which is kind of a co-working place where we start some social innovation groups, projects, and several things like this. And I'm here with Amélie No, who is our new coordinator from this atelier. And we organized a web series, actually, four different events with the CCO, the Conseil de Coopération de l'Ontario. We also organized another event with CSED, like the Center for Social Enterprise, and now with Impact Hub Ottawa, who will host this event. So it's a co-host event, and it's organized through the Ottawa Bilingue Activation Project. So it's actually a thing that we try to make some partnerships, collaborations with people in the region of Ottawa, and try to bring some connections between the Francophone and the Anglophone communities there. So I'll just stop now and just let Gina explain how this event will be from now. So thank you.
Merci, Jonathan. So yeah, I'm going to go over a few housekeeping points first. So feel free to update your Zoom name. As we mentioned, there's a glitch with our Zoom link that some of you received. Your name might be showing up as Tristan. Tristan is my colleague. Do you want to put up your hand, Tristan? Will the real Tristan please stand up? Excuse the reference. And Tristan's going to help us out in the chat today, answering questions in English. And Jonathan et Amélie seront là pour répondre aux questions en français. We will get to the questions probably at the end. So if we don't get to it right away, not to worry. We have recorded your question and we'll get to it eventually. This session is going to be recorded. It'll be shared, I think, with members of our communities respectively. So you don't have to join with your video on. That's entirely up to you. We may also take some screenshots to share with our community as well. So again, video totally optional, up to you. Oh, and lastly, we have a subtitle option. So if you'd like to read the subtitling in English, you can enable that at the bottom of your screen. Just send us a message if you're not sure how to do that, but you should see the option to enable transcript or enable subtitles showing up at the bottom of your menu there. And it's automated, not perfect, not as good as the interpretation by any means, but it should help. So about the Hub, so we are a collaborative co-working space and community based in downtown Ottawa. This is the space. We're closed right now due to the restrictions, but normally we are an open, vibrant, bright co-working space that's just waiting for you to join. So we hope that in a couple of weeks when the restrictions lift and it's safe to do so, that you'll come check us out in person if you haven't yet. We offer virtual memberships though in the meantime, as well as co-working memberships for when we're up and running, and all kinds of events and services in addition to the physical space that we offer. Our goal is to help inspire, connect, and enable you to do good better in the world. And so we're really, really motivated by the kinds of questions that we're going to be exploring in today's conversation with Biblioterre. I will probably end it there. I want to say that, again, I'm so happy to be working with the folks at Atelier. This isn't the first time we've partnered together. It's always a pleasure. And so today's topic, as you know, is on Biblioterre, which is a land-based cooperative based in La Pêche in Quebec. And during this time of climate crisis, which we're all becoming increasingly aware of, they hope to bring people together and build a community that centers generative futures, anti-racism, anti-oppression, as well as Indigenous sovereignty, while demonstrating ecological sustainability. So they launched in 2020, and they're currently working on building relationships with each other and the more than 700 acres of land where Biblioterre sits. Today, we're going to be joined by Lisa Deacon, Eva Konart, Rob Cole, who are going to walk us through what Biblioterre is doing. We're going to discuss the history of the cooperative, the forces that drive their work. We'll be introduced to a concept called sociocracy, which I'm excited to learn more about. We'll get a snapshot of some of the activities and practical lessons that they've learned, as well as some information on how to get involved. So it is my pleasure to welcome to the stage Lisa, Eva, and Rob. Over to you folks.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Gina, and thanks so much for having us, both to the Impact Hub Ottawa and Atelier. It's such an amazing initiative. I really applaud your ability to be collaborating bilingually, be inviting bilingual community here to have this conversation with us today. We're really excited to share the story with social innovators, community transformation practitioners, and really have a conversation about how the Biblioterre model aspires, as you said, to be part of creating a more sustainable and just world. So my name is Lisa Deacon. I'll just ask, we're still in grid mode here because I want to ask my co-presenters, Eva Konart and Robert Cole, to just give a wave. We're not going to do a detailed orientation, but just to say that we're all members of Biblioterra and we're really excited to be here today. I'll share my screen now, if you can give me a quick second. There we go. I've got lots of things going on my screen today. Oops. Let's do this here. Okay, can I get a thumbs up if everybody can see the screen? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so my pronouns are she, her, and as I said, I'm grateful to speak to you today on behalf of Biblioterre alongside Eva and Rob. I'd also like to say thank you very much for Gina's land acknowledgement at the beginning. Biblioterre land is also on traditional and unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. Thank you very much, Gina, for that really nice introduction to the space that we are finding ourselves on today. I just want to start by recognizing some of the barriers that are implicit in today's presentation, as well as some of the privileges that we should be addressing. I'm so grateful, I just want to say, to Fanny and the Co-op Algo for your interpretation into French today. We really appreciate having that option and that ability to connect. We do not have an American Sign Language interpreter. We also, of course, recognize the privileges in accessing a computer to participate in today's session. And it's also really important for us as Biblioterre members to always acknowledge that while our current membership reflects some diversity, we are still overrepresented by white, able-bodied, cisgendered people. And so inevitably this produces and embeds specific power imbalances, practices, and values that we just want to be aware of and acknowledge. It also has really important implications to recognize this because as a land-based cooperative, it's really with white settler privilege that we even have access to the land that we are able to be active on in the first place. So throughout the presentation, we're going to address some of the strategies that link that privilege to responsibility and how we plan to address some of the barriers to participation with us as a community. So a lot of dedicated work. I can't even begin to tell you how much work and love has gone into this project. And there are way more details and stories than we'll be able to cover today. So the topics in this presentation will seem broad, but we're hoping to present, the best holistic overview that we can and an approach of our practices. While also sharing how interested folks can engage with us and really continue the conversation. And if there's anything that you're looking for more information on, we will have space for dialogue and questions at the end of the presentation. So we'll also be sharing and describing some photos throughout the presentation to help introduce our home. So the first image that I'm sharing is of our welcome sign on the space that Biblioterre sits on. It's a hand-painted sign of our name in green and teal on a piece of reclaimed particle board. And Rob actually tells me that that was the original for sale sign. So that's kind of neat how someone in the membership saw that and was inspired to use that to create our welcome sign. The photo was taken in the spring, as you can see. A small part of the grassland, or you may not be able to see, I should say, there is a small part of the grassland and pasture up a ridge in the back and the start of the forest in the background. The land that Biblioterre engages with is a 700-acre agricultural and residential zoning mix. It borders on what is known by settlers as Lake Mahon, M-A-H-O-N, and is mostly forested with some grassland in terms of natural characteristics. So in putting together this description of Biblioterre, we really wanted to focus on our today's state. So where we're at now as a community and as a cooperative. We're in our startup phase, essentially. So we are a land-based cooperative. We're located in what's known as La Pêche, Quebec, just outside of Rupert, for those of you who may be in the region. We were really brought together as a community by our shared desire to celebrate sustainable and anti-oppressive counter-narratives. A fellow member, when I was just getting ready to join, put it really succinctly, so I'll read this part if you don't mind. She was talking about celebrating these sustainable and anti-oppressive counter-narratives and the realities that are being lived and created by people every day. So we know that people around the world, people across what's known as Canada, are living and creating these new counter narratives and realities every day in the face of really what's unprecedented global systemic challenges, including climate change, poverty, racism, and violence. And together as a community, one of the things that has resonated, I think, with all of the membership is that we stand firmly against the myth that these harms are inevitable for current and future generations. So who are we really, and how did we all get here? A number of the original members have been collaborators, friends, colleagues over a decade on various community, farming, and social justice projects in and around various points of Ontario, St. Catharines, Toronto, and Ottawa. Forming the cooperative, I think, for some of those founding members was really an exciting idea for practicing some of the ethics and the concepts that were inspiring them as they did the work together. And since then, they've met other folks like friends and partners like me around the Ottawa and Eastern Ontario who share the Biblioterre vision. Many of our members have pursued knowledge in interrelated fields. It's really wonderful to have a diversity of knowledge and expertise at the table, like food security, Indigenous allyship, water sovereignty, even building. We have folks with building skills and an interest in passive homes, social and community justice, to name just a very few, just scratching the surface of the many interests and skills in our group. About 4 years ago, our earliest members came together and started putting these ideas on paper, shaping what would become the foundation and governance of our co-op. So Biblioterre was officially launched in 2020, and our membership, as Gina mentioned, is currently focused on really building relationships with each other and with the land. So helping to direct and shape our work, of course, there's a lot of nonprofit and community organization-minded people here. We all know that having a vision and a mission is so important to align around with work such as this. So these may seem like simple sentences, brief sentences, but it did take many, many hours of focus and looking inward to capture that wording to really show what our identity and goals would be. So our vision, of course, reflects our ethics and our ideals and further shapes the pillars and the initiatives of Biblioterre. They, like everything, of course, are relational. So our vision enables us to check in with our core values and goals as Biblioterre evolves and diversifies over time. And we ask ourselves questions like, are we connecting to our core values? How do our next steps reflect our overall mission? We ask ourselves those questions as often as possible and revisit those statements. Our mission is, on another hand, is a simple and broad way for us to describe how and what we want to achieve through this project of Biblioterre. So creatively, I love the name. I love the name Biblioterre, and it really caught my eye. And essentially, we refer to the name Biblioterre, as a land library. Because Biblioterre really intends to offer its programs, workshops, and classes to help ecological and socially beneficial land-based initiatives to run on site with a reduced cost of operations and a reduced footprint. We aspire to bring people together and build a community that centers generative futures, as Gina mentioned, and we intend to do this in ways that demonstrate ecological sustainability and center anti-racism, anti-oppression, as well as Indigenous sovereignty. So this is another sign of spring. I think when I was choosing photos to share, I was thinking of how cold it is outside and just how we really wanted to shed some sunshine, and in the deep of winter, just remember that life will return and spring will return. So this is an image that I'm sharing from the land of a spring blossom, which is known by English settlers as a yellow trout lily. It's a bright yellow bloom on a rocky white and pink mossy background. The flower has a speckled orange center with a few stamen and thin blades of bright green grass around it. We're really lucky to have some talented photographers who have visited Biblioterre and been able to capture some of these really beautiful images.
Très doués qui ont pu capturer.
In focusing our work, we have 6 main pillars that support that vision and mission that I referred to before.
Principe et notre mission. Les piliers démontrent chacun quel type de projet, d'initiative et de système.
They are co-produced and support us in our decision making as the co-op evolves. Within these practices and these pillars, we maintain an awareness that people's social locations and their embedded privileges and oppressions determine really how they are able to engage with this project. And so we're aspiring to craft a community that breathes with these different ways that people are able to engage. Practically, this influences our training, the way that our housing model is structured, and on-site policies, which I think Eva will touch a little bit on later in the presentation. And now we can get into some of our initiatives, so what we're up to. The initiatives really clarify these intentions and the practices and draw upon the interests and the experiences of our membership, of course. Some of these initiatives are still broad and in an idea stage. Some of them have gotten really specific and are part of this startup phase that we find ourselves in. For example, the Libraries Initiative is a way to describe the commons or the shared resources within Biblioterre, and we have, as part of that, started a bit of tool library, which we received donations for in the summer, sorry. So other commons sort of library touching would be themes would be shared food, shared transportation around and to the land. Like I mentioned, they're really shaped by member interest alongside the pillars and the vision and the mission. So we all as members bring diverse knowledge and experience, and there are opportunities within the pillars to undertake various projects. Personally, I'm interested in notions of a memorial forest and green burial practices. So that's something that inspired me to reach out to the community and share that passion that I have. I know that others on the call here are very interested in the ways that we link people from the city to agricultural projects and ecologically sustainable healing arts practices, for example. I know that I think that was one of Eva's interests that she brings to Biblioterre. And just another image that I wanted to share. It's taken from the ridge that was pictured in the first image that we shared. And we see here rust-colored sumac buds in the focused foreground, overlooking what is known as Lake Mahon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but Lac Mahon in the blurred background. And on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Eva to get into some of our governance topics. Eva?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so how are we doing this work? How are decisions made? How do we form a community? We aim for our governance structure to reflect our vision and values and enable our initiatives. Within that governance structure, we have decision-making, membership training, solidarity and affinity groups, and the overall cooperative structure. I'm going to talk a bit about sociocracy. Biblioterre operates through dynamic governance in the form of sociocracy. I'll give a brief overview. It's an important part of our functionality. It was something I had never heard of until working with Biblioterre. It's a large and interesting practice. There's a link there, www.sociocracy4all.org/moose/. Please check it out if you're interested. It gives a lot of detailed information. So sociocracy is also known as dynamic governance because it is non-hierarchical and designed to empower people's ability to stay informed while understanding the information flow and decision-making process within their organization. As you can see by the picture, sociocracy is organized into circles, which are defined and have all the power for their particular focus. In sociocracy, this means they have a distinct aim or goal and domain under which they have decision-making power. So each circle has both a leader and a delegate who facilitate information flow from the main or general circle to other specific circles. So for example, this webinar was prepared and delivered by our fundraising, outreach, and events circle. And while the general circle was aware of our working process through our delegates, our capacity for decision-making was completely independent from the general circle. So while power is decentralized, the information flow stays intact, and people are able to ask questions and check in through general circle meetings and our recorded minutes. Sociocracy also operates using consent for decision-making as opposed to consensus. This is defined as no objections. This practice eliminates the use of veto for decisions, instead allowing for progress towards a goal-based consent or an openness on a given topic, including dialogue about the limitations or benefits of any given subject. It takes some practice, but we have been working with this system, and from my experience, sociocracy does provide empowered, efficient decision-making throughout our group. So currently, Biblioterre has 5 circles: the general circle and fundraising, outreach, and events, which I've already mentioned. And then we also have generative community building circle, land relations and projects, and the operating circle. One of the ways that we realize our vision for community is through our trainings. Our generative community building circle oversees these trainings. Upon joining, each member is asked to participate in these sessions within the first year of their membership. Trainings like these are a way to ensure our membership shares a common understanding of how privilege and oppression impact our daily experiences. And so our hope is that it will help us work collectively to transform what are often imbalanced relationships of domination and power towards relationships based on mutual support and trust. As you saw on the last slide with our governance structure, we also have a handful of solidarity and affinity groups operating. These provide alternative, safe spaces for ideas and objections to be shared and to be communicated between people from different social locations. Through these groups, we intend to build anti-racist and anti-oppressive trust, which strengthens our sociocratic governance within circle meetings. For example, the BIPOC identifying members of our co-op have formed an affinity group, and members who identify as benefiting from white privilege have formed a solidarity group, which meets to discuss the topic of how white privilege influences the dynamics and their expectations or experiences in the co-op. Here's another image from the land we wanted to share. It's also taken in the spring. It features some bright colored mushrooms. So I'm not an expert, but I asked around. So apparently these are called English settlers. They're also known as orange mycena, orange faint foot, or orange wax cap. If you know what they are, please type them into the chat. So this, the bouquet of mushrooms is springing up a few inches from the brown and decaying leaves. Oh, next slide. Okay, so a little bit more about our governance. So we're a solidarity co-op. As we mentioned, in 2020, we registered as a solidarity co-op in Quebec. We decided to form a cooperative because in Quebec, there's a long history and community of cooperatives and some amazing organizations like a regional cooperative organization called CDROL. So the CDROL is basically a meta community of cooperatives, and they were instrumental in helping us understand various forms and functions of cooperatives, as well as putting our bylaws and policies into place. We've also learned that we could register as a not-for-profit co-op, and that as a solidarity cooperative, we have the most flexibility in offering membership status to interested participants. And within this governance model, one member is entitled to one vote. Participation. So I know this is a lot of information, and this digital format can be a bit alienating in terms of connecting to us and the content we are sharing. So we're looking forward to our discussion. Just a bit more info before that. So I've used the term member quite a bit today. There are several ways to be involved and engaged with Biblioterre. In fact, most folks who are members began their involvement in some of the ways listed here. Our website outlines how you can get involved, and we'll share some contact information at the end of the presentation and take questions. So while the pandemic has certainly impacted our ability to gather on the land, these are some pictures from outdoor workshops we were able to hold in the fall. So the first picture here is our medicine root walk. That's the bigger picture with the big root in hand there. And then the second was from our wreath making workshop using foraged materials. So as mentioned before, we're in the startup phase and a lot of important work has been done to solidify and materialize the ethics and values of Biblioterre. Here are some of our 2022 goals and activities. And here's another image taken from the land. It shows the buildings that are currently on the land. So the land occupies both sides of the road. So on the left of the image, there's the white Century farmhouse and a smaller white workshop building. And across the road, you see our main barn, which is well loved to say the least. The foreground of the photo from the ridge to the buildings shows some of the grassland. So we were so eager to present this webinar to broaden the conversations and embody solidarity with the amazing community of people in the area we are practicing. Biblioterre aims to be an adaptive movement centered around the voices of the global majority. We are doing this work because we want to listen and prioritize diverse voices within the development and guidance of our project. And here's an aerial shot of some of the land in the water as well. So thank you. We really appreciate you all choosing to share this time with us today and for your interest in our project. There are necessarily many approaches and strategies for centering equity, inclusion, sustainability, and resilience in our lives. And the community of Biblioterre is giving it a try. We look forward to continuing the conversation, hearing your feedback, and hopefully collaborating with some of you in the future. Here are some details about how you can reach us to continue the conversation and stay up to date. Thanks again. We'd love to take any questions. And if there's anything that came up for you that you want to discuss, we're here again and so grateful for your time.
Thank you so much, Eva. That was wonderful. I noticed Lisa's comment about how everyone was smiling as soon as the photos of the land were shown, and it's so true. I mean, not only because we just see kind of brown and snow in this moment, it's so nice to see the colors, but it seems like a really beautiful space. Yeah, we have time for questions. So I have a couple of questions. Maybe I'll just start with one to get the ball rolling. And I might have missed this, but it's kind of one of those technical questions. How are you funded? Like you've mentioned the sort of the legal status that you have or are seeking. Are all of these initiatives self-led? Like you mentioned some training. Is it that members of your community will receive the training themselves and then offer it to members of the cooperative, or is it that you are contributing funds toward receiving the training from someone else? Just kind of a technical question I'm curious about.
I can start with an answer to that. That's really funny that we totally left that out too. So it is a diverse funding model. We have there are some membership fees. There are as well some rental fees. We have a dedicated fundraising team as part of that fundraising outreach and events circle that are looking into, I think it was on one of the slides that we're doing a fundraiser shortly, I think next month, for the common space, so developing a community center. So we have received a lot of support from community as well. We also have a team that is scoping out grants and doing all that fun work of grant writing proposals and things. So sorry, I don't know if I said that right. I'll invite Rob and Eva to kind of add anything to that. I think it's an interesting part. It's an interesting part of us as a community because a lot of us do identify as anti-capitalist, yet we know that there are certain constraints in operating in that way. So Rob or Eva, did you want to jump in and elaborate?
Hi everyone, my name is Rob. Yeah, around the funding model, so the long-term goal once we're established on the land is to be able to rent different sizes of land to different people for different projects so that we can have a very diverse patchwork of initiatives going on the land related to agriculture or social justice or environmental justice. And we're intending to work with a very low cost and sliding scale system for people to be able to rent these spaces of land. But to get started, to go through the putting the down payment on the land for the purchase and to fund the mortgage and various bills during these establishment years, the members purchase shares in the cooperative. So these shares are based on whatever each individual can provide, what they're able and willing to provide, and they're recorded and documented so that in the future, they can be exchanged, they can be reimbursed through the renting of land or the renting of space or the renting of, be it agricultural land or residential land in the future. So for now, it's predominantly just each individual sharing the cost. Thanks.
Thanks, Robert and Lisa. I don't know, Eva, if you wanted to add anything. No, that's okay. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was slow to unmute. I think they covered it all, but we also do accept donations through the website.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, maybe we'll put another link in the chat. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I know it's a kind of the technical question, but it did cross my mind. That's wonderful. We had a question or a raised hand from Tara and also from one of the Tristans. So we'll start with you, Tara, and then whoever is the Tristan with a raised hand, we'll get to you. And then Nicole, I see you have a question in the chat too. So there we go. It'll be Tara, one of the Tristans, Nicole, and then Nadia.
Thanks. Just first of all, congratulations for this cooperative and initiative. It's amazing. I think we need more of that these days. I'm curious how many people live on the space, as well as what, like, the members that live there themselves. Is the plan to do some sort of farming, or and like, if so, what type of things are your members interested in doing? That type of thing. That's it.
So Rob is an on-site member, so I'll invite Rob to respond.
Thanks for the question. Yes, I am one of 3 on-site residents in this first year. As you may have seen from one of the photographs, the buildings here were sold as is and were largely neglected. So our roles as the first on-site members are to help establish the spaces on site to be accommodating to more members over time. And our housing plan, since we have the benefits of mixed zoning, but also cooperative allowances for worker housing and various things, is that so we're hoping to start, we have plans to basically establish an experimental tiny home village, as well as like very high density multiplex dwellings. So to be able to offer members options of like that basically are on the spectrum of fully on the grid and fully off the grid. You know, hoping that like we're trying our best to do this in partnership with our municipality, who claims to be very interested in these types of endeavors. So we'll see how that goes, but we are just beginning and hoping just to get people coming out and camping as much as possible for now. And in terms of actual projects on the land, you know, we all have different ideas of what we'd like to do. Personally, I'm interested in a large-scale
Intéressé à un projet de
project, as well as a holistic orchard and a reciprocal animal therapy project that is therapy for rescued, injured farm animals, that also is therapy for the people who would be there to do the work with said animals. So, but there's probably about 100 ideas out there, even though we're only 16 to 20 members strong at this point. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And just a quick follow-up. How much of the land is forested and how much is cleared?
About 400 acres is forested, and the rest is open agriculture and residential. So.
Thanks, Robert. We had another raised hand from Tristan, but due to a funny hiccup, there are many Tristans in the room. So if you are a Tristan who had a raised hand intentionally, you're up next.
Hi, all. My name's Nadia, and I was listed as a Tristan, so that would have been me. I work at the University of Ottawa and Carleton University, and I'm very interested in potential ties with universities. Obviously this is already hosted by St. Paul University, so there's a connection there. I'd be interested in building future educational connections. And when I say that, what I mean is that, how do I put it? Like, you're already doing education. You're already working on sharing governance ideas and putting them into practice. And it's an ideal location for land-based learning. And so, I mean, obviously learning is already part of the mandate. I first learned about Biblioterre from a colleague who himself teaches ecology and environmental governance at the University of Ottawa, and of course as well. And so I've been interested for a while, but I also know you've been at the very beginning, and I don't want to sort of jump in when you're too early. So I just wanted to put it out there to everyone here who's interested in this, that I'd be happy to do what I can from my end. I have limits. I've never been educated in land-based learning myself, so I wouldn't be an educator of it, but I would be interested in making sure that it could be facilitated and that it could happen by the people who are interested in making it happen. And we're bilingual, so it could be in French, it could be in English, and I'd be very happy for it to be in other languages like Anishinaabe and so on. So I'm actually reachable just from my name. You can find my email. I think I've emailed Biblioterre in the past. But to all those here, this is an open invitation to say I'm interested in collaborating in this sphere. And I'll put in the chat some work that I do with colleagues, many. And so we have partners in Brazil who are trying to establish a Trout university in Brazil, an indigenous university in Brazil. We have partners in Lebanon and in Palestine and Iraq and around the world. So I just see Biblioterre as fitting in within very much larger global movements toward doing this. And I'd be happy to introduce you more internationally if you're not already introduced. Nice to meet you all. So I don't have a question, but much more a long-term, how can we work together over the next 10 years kind of question. Thanks.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Nadia, for offering that. I did want to pick up on one thing. There was a question that was sent to me about information being available in French. Are our meetings and workshops accessible for those who are not yet fluent in French? In English. And you mentioned, the bilingual aspects of Université d'Ottawa. And so I feel like, though you didn't quite ask a question, it led to this sharing and of this other question, which is a really important one, especially for everyone who's here today and everyone who engages in the community around Biblioterre. So I'll say that as a member of the fundraising, outreach and events circle, translating all of our information to French has been a priority. It's something that we are working on. There are aspects of our website that are fully translated and proofread by Francophone members of the community. We haven't yet had meetings or workshops officially conducted in French, but I think that is something that is coming next. And it would be wonderful because we are such an interconnected community. I think that the more we can do is based on the more folks who are in our community who speak these different languages as well, and that is part of our diversity. The priority of our work for diversity is to make sure that is something that we're putting and centering in as we evolve. I'll say. Rob or Eva, did you have anything to add on the language piece? Okay. Thank you again, Nadia, for that generous offering. That's very nice, and I know that we'll be following up.
Thank you for the great connection that was just made there. That was wonderful. I'll just remind folks we have Denise, Hayden, Tristan, and Colby up next. So Denise, feel free to go ahead with your question.
Okay, thanks very much. I think it's really amazing what you're doing and how you're doing it, and I really appreciate that you started off with your focus on anti-oppression and recognizing the privilege of being white settlers primarily on with privilege in terms of access to land and so on. So this is really great. I think. And I'm asking this because I struggle with this question as well. What does it really mean to center Indigenous sovereignty on stolen land, right? What does it mean to center, to acknowledge and Indigenous leadership, Algonquin leadership, and sovereignty over land? What's the relationship of what you're trying to do to the land back movement, for example, and Indigenous resurgence, and what kinds of relationships are you able to establish? I mean, again, I think what you're doing is really amazing, and it's a great example of prefiguring sustainability, and you're living, as you said, you're practicing what you want to see in the future. But there's this whole question of the land that I think is really fundamental to what you're doing, but also to other movements, and really, the centrality of Indigenous ownership of land. So yeah, just if you have any further thoughts on that, that would be really appreciated. Thanks.
I'll ask Rob to respond. Yeah, thanks for the wave, Rob. Take it away.
Going beyond just verbal land acknowledgements is something that has been foundational to this project, and a reason why many of the members came together to start their own land-based project rather than joining pre-existing intentional communities. Our project, through various relationships that occurred before we knew we would be on Algonquin traditional territory, factored in different advisory relationships that different members had with different people, and attempted to bring together when forming this project. So obviously we don't have long-term answers, but where we are at and where we are working is that we have been sending out periodic communications to Kitigan-Zibi, our closest Algonquin reserve community, followed by 10 other Algonquin reserve communities, attempting to request meetings and the creation of an advisory council to help us with the actual unfolding of this project. Because what we as members are currently intending to do is to have our cooperative policies and practices affect only 50% of the land base. So to truly operate only on 350 acres of the 700, and to attempt to open up the rest of the land for sovereign decision-making, if possible, involving not just one Algonquin community, but all Algonquin communities. At this point, our friendships are with members of Kitigan-Zibi, some of whom have come to walk the land and offer advice and have expressed interest in
Des conseils, ont exprimé de
conducting sweats and fasts. And we have been working with an Algonquin elder who has come to do seasonal circles ceremonies with our group as we just introduce our presence to the land. And in so doing, we are working very slowly, expecting that these relationships are going to be built one by one and will be perceived with a lot of skepticism and caution, which is justifiable. And we are basically assuming that we, as members, will hold lightly to the idea of where we situate our businesses or situate our homes, and we hold space for people to come in over time in the future. So it is very much built into all of our decisions, I would say. Even when we don't have, either when we do have a specific advisor to speak with, or we don't, we hold this space. And we're taking responsibility for the bills, the taxes, and attempting to look at the land trust models as a way of creating a land sharing agreement in collaboration with people involved in land back movement to create a protected space that lasts in perpetuity. So multi-generational, ideally. Feel free to ask more or get in contact with us for more specifics that may have been pretty vague. So thanks for the question.
Thanks, Robert, for your answer, and Denise for that really critical question. I'm looking at the clock. We have 3 minutes left and 3 to 4 questions. So what I think I might do, first of all, no, let's just go with one question, I think, and then Lisa, Robert, and Ava can share maybe their contact information for folks who want to reach out with their specific questions. Actually, they're in the chat already. So Hayden's question is an important one, so maybe we'll quickly go to that. Have you got any disabled members or friends who could help make sure that the homes and facilities on the land aren't going to create further challenges? I know a lot of tiny home style buildings can be really detrimental to disabled folk who have mobility issues. Another question we could spend a lot of time talking about, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. Thanks, Hayden, for that. And it's one that I think we can use, we can point to our affinity and solidarity groups as a really great tool that's within our governance structure to make sure that we aren't going forward with making decisions that exclude the perspectives of people who are living with disabilities, as well as doing what we can with the buildings that are on site as we renovate them and plan to open them up for community, to do what we can to make sure that they're accessible for the membership, for all members in community who identify as having and living with disabilities. We do have several members within Biblioterre who do identify as living with disabilities. And so again, it's that interplay between the affinity and solidarity groups and voicing, though I'm not personally on the housing justice team, I can't speak to specifics. And we're certainly not breaking ground on tiny homes in the near future, but it's really wonderful to know that there are these tools in our governance structure to make sure that those decisions are made equitably and with everyone's abilities in mind.
Thanks, Lisa. And thanks, Hayden, for the question. I think we might wrap it up there. I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined, but in particular to our partners at Atelier and also Biblioterre for hosting. It's been really inspiring learning about your methods, about your why, about your how. And I personally am really, really excited to see how this all unfolds. And also thank you to everyone who joined with wonderful, wonderful questions for discussion. I will end it here. You will get a recording in your inbox either today or tomorrow of this event so you can rewatch it. We'll make sure to include some contact information on Biblioterre. And yeah, I wish you all a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much for spending your lunchtime with us.
Thank you.
Merci.